Spaetkauf. Berlin news in English.
It's Sunday, July 6th, 2025. This is Radio Spaetkauf live at the Lakeside Film Festival, Volume 11, in front of a wonderful Lakeside Festival crowd.
My name is Joel.
My name's Izzy.
And I am Daniel Arbor Stern.
And coming up on this show, we're going to geek out about movies out here in nature. We're going to talk to a Ukrainian filmmaker, film festival director, about how the Ukrainian film industry continues even during a war, and lots more coming up. But firstly, just to appreciate the beautiful space that we're in back here again, Dan, after so many years. I've lost count of the number of times we've come out here and recorded, but it's just a lovely little tradition. Come out to the Klingemüller campsite by the lake with all our friends from Mobile Kino, Lakeside Film Festival. Familiar faces all the time, new faces. One thing I really appreciate about this festival is that it's turned into a half Latino festival, which I think, the more Latinos, the better. So that's wonderful.
Why is that, Joel?
There's some noise from our Latino audience.
Wow. Or just fans of.
Very nice. But Izzy, it's amazingly, after all these years that we've been doing this and all the years that you've been doing Radio Spaetkauf, somehow it's your very first time here.
It's my very first time, and I'm very happy to be here. It's wonderful. It's like a little slice of paradise. I have to say, I wasn't really expecting much. I literally got in my car yesterday evening because I was waiting for my husband to get back so he could take over the kids, and then I got in the car straight away and then came here. I wasn't expecting anything. Firstly, no one told me about the whole you kind of bring your own food and you bring your own supplies and stuff like that. So I was a bit sort of beg, borrow, or steal yesterday. But apart from that, it was just wonderful. It's sort of like turning up in like a little, slice of paradise outside of Berlin. Very far outside of Berlin.
Is it that you didn't believe us previous years when we told you how nice it was? Or that you just thought we were exaggerating? Or
I think the conversations washed over me like a summer breeze. And I wasn't really paying that much attention. Be like, oh yeah, we did a recording at Lakeside Festival. Be like, okay, cool, nice.
Because I had to explain to you that there's movies at night. I would have thought that would have been inherent in the title, but the film festival part, no. You seemed surprised that there were actually projections.
Yeah, I was like, okay, there's movies and they go all night. I think what surprised me was that they go all night. So you could have like one movie and then another movie and then another movie after that. That was what I was like, what? Are people staying up so late?
Not me. I go to bed after one movie. But yeah, there are some hardcore people who sit out there with their blankets and watch them all to the end.
I watched a movie from my car last night. Dan stayed for about 10 minutes and then he got scared and then he left. We watched Possession with Sam Neill, who is a New Zealander and gorgeous. And this was back when he was younger. But it was it was pretty off the wall, I have to say. When was it made? Dan said 1992, but it looked like the 1980s. And it's set in West Berlin.
Oh, I was lying when I said that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any information about that film.
So
don't repeat that.
And then, it's when? 81. Okay, so definitely 81. And it's got the vistas of the Berlin Wall in the background, and it takes place with a French woman who seems to be possessed by various different things. I mean, I
just want to be clear. This is a description of a person who's basically sober, watched this movie last night.
Yeah.
And this is the best she can do to explain it. If that, and I want to say that as that's the selling point.
Yeah.
Okay, it was weird, and I ran away because I didn't know what was going on, and I was afraid someone was going to get hurt.
Well, there was, I think, at one point there was a child who was in precarious situations, and I think that's when Dan was like, "Nah."
Oh yeah, I don't watch movies with that.
No.
I don't want to see kids get hurt or women in prison.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Joel? What did you watch?
I've got some notes about the movies I watched, but they'll be coming up in our later chatter.
Okay.
Yeah. But okay, just for a little while though, we have to transport ourselves back to Berlin because we are a Berlin news show, and people listening at home are mostly not here enjoying what we are. So unfortunately, here's a little bit of news about Berlin to take you away from paradise for a second, audience. But bear with us, and to our audience at home, here is your update about what is going on in Berlin.
Okay, so the Görli bleibt offen campaign is intensifying as construction of the controversial fence around Görlitzer Park moves forward. The Berlin Senat has begun installing the fence, which will close the park nightly between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. in summer and 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in winter, as part of a broader €30 million security package aimed at reducing crime in areas like Görli and Leopoldplatz. Opponents of the fence argue it's
ostensibly aimed at reducing crime.
Here we go. Opponents of the fence argue that it is a symbolic and ineffective measure that will merely displace drug activity rather than solve it. They also criticize the project as a misuse of funds, calling for more investment in social services, addiction support, and community infrastructure instead. Many see it as a form of populist actionism that criminalizes public spaces and targets marginalized communities. The fence, they argue, is a step towards sanitized, exclusionary city that caters to the wealthy while pushing out everyone else.
Yeah. So
it's one not in my backyard versus another not in my backyard.
No, it's a little bit more than that. I don't think it's only a NIMBYism thing.
No, it's two different NIMBYisms.
There are alternative concepts being proposed. There's a local initiative called Görli zaunfrei, Görli fence-free, that don't involve fencing of public space. In a city that prides itself on openness and diversity, the Görli campaign is a powerful reminder that Berliners are willing to fight for public spaces that serve everyone, not just the richest, and risk-averse. So I have to cross that park frequently, and I've been actually going through more often at night, knowing that I won't be able to go through soon. Like I'm diverting my route. I have two options to get home, and one of them is that one, and I've been taking it just to, this is it. I might not be able to go through here at night. And a few times I've gone through, and I've just seen... people like family at 11 p.m. sitting around a table playing chess in the middle. That's what's not allowed here anymore. So I think it's a bit of overkill what the police are doing, what the Berlin city is doing. It's obviously symbolic, and they're trying to make a statement without really solving the problems. Is how I see it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean.
I think they have done trials in the past, and what happens tends to be that the selling of drugs activity that happens within the park just gets displaced to Görlitzer Bahnhof or the surrounding areas, and that's actually closer to residents than further away. And it just seems a bit mad to not be tackling the actual problems rather than actually just putting up a fence around a location.
But I mean, this all brewed out of, it wasn't drug dealing that were the crimes that like enabled people to focus on safety in that park, right? It was violence against women, and those are the things that like made the headlines and grew the support, because they've tried the drug stuff before, and that's always failed very, very rapidly. What was that guy's name? Knife Face? The old our previous security minister in Berlin. What was his name?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Anyway, the point is, I think that making the park safer isn't an illegitimate decision, and making it someplace where it's actually good to play chess as a family all night.
They were playing chess quite happily.
But not in all of it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I would possibly believe that if I believe that the CDU cares about the safety of most women. Do you know what I mean? When they're cutting budgets for women's refuges all over Berlin that serve as a life-saving measure for women living in domestic abuse situations. So I think the security of women tends to get bandied around by conservatives as a cudgel to get through very conservative policies that don't actually help the community.
As someone, don't move me along with your little finger, Joel. As someone who got, I was stabbed once lately in a park near me, and it was a very light stabbing. I was fine by the time I got home. But one of the things they did subsequently was trim the bushes and put in lights, and that worked pretty well. Yeah, and it's cheaper than a wall.
Yeah, much cheaper.
Maybe you should participate in the public consultation, which I don't know if it's actually happening, but if there was one. Put up lights and trim the hedges?
I'll just bitch on a podcast. I'm sorry.
Cool.
Complain.
Hey, Kai.
Next up, Joel.
So progress is being made to curb Berlin's sky-high rents, starting in Neukölln, which is fast becoming the city's unlikely housing hero. Hats off to zoning law for this one. In a bold move, Neukölln has officially banned the temporary rental of furnished apartments in its Milieuschutzgebiete, or neighborhoods protected from gentrification. These short-term leases, often marketed as Wohnen auf Zeit, have long been a loophole for landlords to sidestep rent caps and charge luxury prices for basic flats. Think like 3,500 for 80 square meters and a couch that's seen better days. I have a flat opposite from mine that is being rented out through one of these furnished apartment companies that is 60 square meters and being rented out for €2,200.
So a friend of ours, Walter, he recently told me about his neighbors. They've got a 4-bedroom flat downstairs, and now each room is being rented out individually for something like €1,200 a room in a shared flat. So that's where we're at. But Neukölln has said, no, you can't do this Wohnung auf Zeit furnished flat loophole. There was a foundation for this ban, which was in 2023, a court ruling that deemed that these kind of conversions into these shared, these Wohnung auf Zeit flats was unlawful in protected areas. And Neukölln is now enforcing that decision, even ordering landlords to reverse co-living setups and restore the original apartment layouts. I haven't heard of this kind of activism by the city, the Bezirk, for a long time. This is fantastic. So the city-state Senate and other districts are watching this closely, with some already exploring similar messages. Critics have long warned that these furnished rentals are a form of stealth gentrification, pricing out long-term residents in favor of the transient professionals and digital nomads. But now Berlin is pushing back. So this is a promising sign that the city is serious about protecting affordable housing, and not just for the wealthy and networked. But of course, this is only one district, right?
Milieuschutzgebiete. Yeah, so
and we've got to draw a distinction between the city government, which is run by the CDU, and the local councils, which are run by various different political parties and coalitions. And so here we got Neukölln being more active than the biggest city-state.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in Neukölln, for instance, we've got Schillerkiez, which is under Milieusschutz, but my Kiez, Körnerkiez, is not, as far as I understand it. So I don't think that they would be protected in the same way. So maybe that's another step in the housing campaigning, is now get the whole of Berlin under Milieusschutz.
Right. I mean, but the issue with these, and we've gone through various iterations of this, is always the lack of enforcement and the lack of punishment. So everything we do, it's like, they're just going to cheat until they get caught. And if getting caught doesn't come with any repercussions other than saying, okay, I'll stop, then it's never really going to work.
And it often depends on individuals enforcing it themselves through taking your landlord to court, which is why it's always a good idea to join a renters association where they have legal insurance and they'll give you a lawyer if you need one.
Or using Connie.
Yep.
Is a great. Every time someone moves into my building, I immediately tell them who to contact to get their rents lowered. And I do that to keep all of our rents. I mean, it is a way you can individually, like, A, make new friends, and B, like, keep the spiegel down. It's by every single time doing that. And those short-term rentals, the other issue is everyone knows they're illegal. They're doing these things. You get 3 contracts, whatever. And there's people who are just, unfortunately, have enough money and have no recourse in the course of 3 months or 6 months or a year to go through a court system or to a college lawyer or do any of these things. It just takes a long time. So and sometimes they're like nice people, and then they move out and you miss them.
And fear. A lot of people fear this. They worry about getting into fights, but you almost always win. So do it.
Yeah.
Berlin's most explosive New Year's tradition has fizzled, not with a bang, but with a budget cut. Thank you. The iconic Silvester party at Brandenburg Gate, a staple since reunification, has been cancelled for 2025. The event organisers, Berlin Feiert Silvester GmbH, announced that it won't go forward without a confirmed subsidy from the city, typically between 500,000 and 1 million euros from public tourism agencies like Visit Berlin. Despite last year's sold-out crowds of 65,000 people and a national TV broadcast, the event has never turned a profit, and organisers say raising ticket prices would exclude families and low-income Berliners. The cancellation leaves a symbolic void in the capital's calendar, and a logistical one too, as the city now faces the prospect of unmanaged crowds and private firework chaos at the gate. Ironically, it was precisely this kind of disorder that Kai Wegner leveraged in his 2023 campaign, using outrage over the New Year's Eve violence to stoke fears about people who didn't look like CDU voters and public safety. His calls for police to release the suspects' names from the 2023 fireworks debacle were widely seen as dog whistles aimed at Berlin's immigrant communities. Now, with no official fireworks and no clear plan, Berlin may once again be left with the only kind of spectacle that politicians can spin votes into.
I had never actually been to the New Year's event, the public one at Brandenburg Gate, but I was happy that it existed, at least to contain it in a space. And maybe if there had been any idea of organized fireworks, which I think is a great idea, you should just have one place for fireworks and it should just be there and the city government should manage it. But now that doesn't exist. I can't wait to see where all the fireworks fun is going to go now. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I could do that show for like a third of the price.
Are you don't know offering?
If you guys, I mean, I've tuned in recent years. Like if you're not at a tier where you're even competing to be on like, it's just the music. I don't want to like, I don't want to shit on anyone's pop music culture, but like I can get some bands, like who here in the audience played in a band at this festival this week or saw one? They were all pretty good, right? Yeah. I guarantee, I mean, Lakeside, they're generous. They're not paying millions, We can put on a great show. No one's going to be bothered.
Okay, you heard it here first.
There's your pitch to take over the event.
I'll take €1 million. Like, do you guys understand? I did this podcast for $10.
Well, we're not getting that because the city of Berlin is in a budget slasherama. It's cutting everything it can. And so too is the state of Brandenburg next door, which we are currently in. Our money is being cut from everything, but there's one thing that is going to stay free, and that is access to Park Sanssouci. Sanssouci, I never know how to pronounce it.
Sanssouci.
Sanssouci. Thank you, tour guide Izzy.
Wait. I know the meaning.
Yeah, it's without
sushi. A care. Right?
No, yeah.
You said without sushi?
Yeah, like raw fish.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I think we'll just have to beg to differ.
I'm pretty sure there is no sushi out there, so you might be right there.
In the 1700s, when it was built.
So the beautiful collection of palaces in Potsdam is sometimes called the Versailles of Germany. And there was some discussion about introducing a ticket to try and recoup 800,000 euros. But the government out at Potsdam has decided to keep Sanssouci free, so you can go out there and wander and see the palaces built by Germany's gay king, Friedrich the Great, who lived out there with a harem of beautiful young men.
Including Voltaire,
and even he had a statue of a naked young man installed outside his bedroom window, which is still there. All for free, which, Dan, you're not so happy about, I understand.
I just think, like, when we're prioritizing what's going to be free and what people are going to have access to, something that's, like, blatantly a tourist attraction and doesn't really enhance any of the vibrant living cultures of Berlin, but in fact reflects like this dude's collection of stuff that he just liked from Greece, So like, I think we can just let people pay to see that. Unless, how about this? Berlin residents could get in for free. I'll take that. But like, honestly, fuck Sanssouci. I mean, it's beautiful. I love it. It's a great place to visit. I was harsh. I didn't mean to say that. I just meant that like, if we're going to be shutting down like the existence of contemporary important artistic creation, like, let's change our priorities. So like, quote, fuck it, unquote.
I haven't been out there for years, so I don't really have a ball in the game, but I'd be happy to pay $5 or $10 if it helps. But at the same time, if you can't afford, then
Potsdam's got money. They should pay for it. No, there's like billionaires and millionaires who live in Potsdam now. They should pay for it. We should get some of their money.
Sounds like a bit of a tax the rich pitch you're doing there.
100% wherever I can bring it in. Wherever I can bring it in.
Let them live there. If they want to be, it's just the modern Sanssouci anyway.
Cool. So we have an update on the Berlin Four. So the case of the Berlin Four, 3 EU citizens and 1 American threatened with deportation from Germany, has taken a significant turn in the last weeks. The 4 activists, Shane O'Brien and Roberta Murray, Kasia Vasilik and Cooper Longbottom, were initially targeted for deportation following their participation in pro-Palestinian sit-in protests at the Berlin's Free University in late 2024. Authorities accused them of anti-Semitism and supporting terrorist activities. However, these claims were widely criticised as politically motivated and lacking clear evidence. Notably, Cooper Longbottom had no criminal record, and the court found no proof that he was a core organiser. In May 2025, the Berlin Administrative Court ruled in favour of the activists, halting their deportations. The court found the legal grounds for expulsion insufficient and emphasised the importance of protecting political expression. While the ruling doesn't end the case, police investigations are ongoing. It means the 4 cannot be deported while their appeals are being heard. The case has sparked international debate about freedom of speech, protest rights, and the use of immigration law to suppress dissent, particularly in the context of Germany's sensitive stance on Israel-Palestine issues. For now, the Berlin Four remain in the city and their legal battle continues, but with growing public support and a court decision on their side. So, yeah.
This is drawing sort of equivalence to what was going on in the US with a lot of the student activists there being rounded up, and I think it's important to note that a lot of this activity is happening. The police are doing a lot of things, trying their luck and seeing what they can get away with, and then courts are often having to go back and say, no, the police were wrong and they should not have arrested these people. They shouldn't have prosecuted people for writing statements on their Twitter or their social media that other courts have since found not to be problematic. So there's a lot of things that the Berlin police are doing now, which is what I think these issues are important, is that there's been a notable change in the way Berlin polices protests in the last 2 years since sort of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations kicked off. And the police have certainly become far more active and aggressive in terms of policing protests, and I think that's a notable change that we should pay attention to. Whatever side of the debate you fall on, whether you think you support or don't support these particular protests, I think it's just important as a marker to realize that Berlin has the police have changed the way that they approach protests, and they're doing far more than they ever have. And a lot of it courts are finding after to be illegal and are reversing it.
Yeah, and there's also quite a lot of violence being perpetrated against protesters as well. Like the recent Nachbar protest that was organised at the end of May was a particularly sort of despicable example of huge amounts of violence against protesters. And then the headlines the next morning were, I think, police in danger, where one policeman who had been, I think, batoned by someone behind him within his own ranks had like an arm injury. So
I think he had carpal tunnel from using his baton.
But yeah, no, it's a very effective suppression tactic, right? Because most people are not willing to get arrested, which is completely understandable. I'm not willing to get arrested, for instance. Like most people do not want to go to a protest and get arrested. So what you're doing is you're eradicating the vast majority of middle-class occupant or middle-class people who would get energized to actually go to a protest if it was seen as more mainstream and something where they could bring their kids, bring their bicycles, like have a nice day and then go to brunch afterwards or something like that. Like that's not going to happen when you have people having to fight against violence, suppression, police brutality, and potentially even being arrested as a result of being at a protest. So you're really like doing a lot to keep numbers small. Yeah, I mean, one protest that wasn't small, though, was on the 21st of June this year. So that was the United for Gaza protest that got 70,000 people as per organisers. The police always report much, much lower figures. But yeah, 70,000 people on the streets for the United for Gaza protest. So that was more of a, you can see that mainstream effect of mainstreaming.
And another big one coming up.
Yep. So at the end of this month, in end of July, Die Linke, who has in recent months become more vocal on Gaza, is organising a protest to ideally get a cross-section of civil society in support of a permanent ceasefire.
I think one other thing that's really important to know is whether or not you need street protests to be a safe place for bougie parents who like brunch.
I like brunch.
No. I'm not saying one should or shouldn't. I'm saying regardless of that, if you want to look at a different way of policing, look at how they, what the arrangements the police have when the AfD or further right of the AfD are marching, and that they are there to make sure that they are protected, that they get their chance to express their free speech, even when you're talking about, the Drittenweg and things that are just clearly fucking Nazis. So it's safe to be a Nazi in Berlin in a street protest, unless, cool Antifa punks are there to beat you up. But, at least in terms of the police, they're going to keep you safe. So regardless of brunch, I mean, you should be able to beat up a Nazi and get brunch, whatever. Our guest today is a film curator, distributor, and researcher based in Berlin. She is the founder of the Ukrainian Film Festival Berlin and runs the distribution company Pivka Films, promoting Ukrainian cinema internationally. Since 2009, she's been a programmer and curator of I'm going to say it wrong, and I just asked her how to say it, and it's not going to matter. We'll edit it in later. I'll say it right later. Lviv International Short Film Festival.
That's correct.
Thank you. Vitzart. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Valentina Zalevska.
Valentina Zalevska, how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting thing about Lviv. It's a city in the West Ukraine because Andrzej Żuławski, the possession film, was born in this city, and I saw yesterday a lot of references to the place where we with him were born and where he was raised. It was at the time Poland, of course, but yeah, that's an interesting fact about possession.
Because yeah.
So the reason that you're here is because we're at Lakeside Film Festival, and part of the programming here is to invite other festivals to come and show some of the best of their selection and do a bit of promotion. So you have your own film festival coming up, the Ukrainian Film Festival, which will be in Berlin in October, 22 to 26. So you brought a couple of your films here, and I saw one of them last night, which was fantastic. We'll talk a bit about that. But tell me, in general, how's it going as a Ukrainian film festival curator?
It's pretty tough to promote, any international film now. As you know, we are not doing good in the sense of bringing the films to the cinema. But yeah, we've been doing it a long time before the full-scale invasion, so it helps. So we've been doing the Ukrainian Film Festival before, and we've been doing it in Berlin for 13 years, I think, as a film club. And then we started to do the film days, and then the big kind of festival covering all Berlin appeared. And then I think we got our time, the best time, because in 2022, when the full-scale invasion happened, everybody wanted to know something about Ukraine. So we got massive amount of requests about Ukrainian films. And then basically how the company has started.
So what were the early days like? Because this grew out of this. What was the club? What did that look like?
There was like a remote cinema, in the sense of it was remote. It was Protfabrik, and there was once per month where there was very small Ukrainian film club, and where we basically all met and started. But then basically one event that I think 5 times more people came that the cinema could allocate, and then we understood that we need to expand and start something else. So now we are pretty big as a festival with a massive audience, 9 locations all over the Berlin. So, yeah.
The movie that you showed here last night was called You Are the Universe. Hey, do you want to give us your take on it? Izzy, you watched it.
Loved it so much.
What gives us a synopsis in a couple of words?
Ooh, is it because I was so bad at giving a Possession a synopsis?
No, that was
earlier?
Possession was unsynopsizable. Okay. This one makes sense.
Okay. Man is on a spaceship delivering radioactive material to the other side of the galaxy and
solar system,
and he watches the Earth explode. He's the last man on Earth, but then it turns out there's a message on the radio.
Okay, yeah.
So you missed that part because Dan interrupted you. Then what does it turn out?
There's a message from someone else who survived as well. And then it's about the relationship that builds between them. It's fucking beautiful film. I love that film. I really do.
I liked it a lot too.
Yeah.
I particularly like it's one of those films where you've got like a robot on board, you know, the man interacting with his robot. And I thought it was cool how this time the robot was represented by this clunky looking thing hanging from the ceiling on like a rail that goes around the spaceship, which just seems so impractical. But I hadn't seen a robot like on a spaceship presented in that way before. So it had some new visual elements. Yeah,
it manages to be visually rich while someone is stuck in a capsule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that you like the film and it's kind of well received by international people because the script is amazing. It has so many layers, and also the language wise is like super rich in the sense that it's like featuring the local accent where the director is from, and also background, the social kind of background of the guy. As I call it, like you never expect to have from Ukraine like a sci-fi film, but as I call it, it's like the first internationally kind of exposed Ukrainian DIY sci-fi film.
So
there's no budget.
So tell me, the thing that shocked me the most, that this film was released this year, right? Which means it's been made during the full-scale invasion. Is that right? Tell me, how does the cinema industry exist in Ukraine? How do these films get made?
Yeah, this film was existing it started in 2013, like the play. He wrote the play and then worked at the play. But yes, you're correct. The shooting were during the worst times of, it was 2022, 2023 in the studio, and they had like massive electricity outrages, so they couldn't shoot it. And like the shooting was almost for 2 years because of that, but they needed to finish. Finally, it was during the full-scale invasion. And then actually the main actor, Volodymyr Melnik, now is in the Ukrainian armed forces after 2 years. So he joined, I think, in 2024. Yeah.
But are these films still being shot constantly?
The thing is, in Ukraine, and I think you can understand it and relate, we can't do fiction at all. I mean, with actors and shooting because of the insurances, because also like the shooting days will be postponed because of the attacks. But we do kind of this film that can be done in the studio. There's not so much fiction. It's only documentaries that being produced in Ukraine, and all the fiction films that we got from the recent years are they having like this kind of setting, the studio setting, but there's not much. There's like only a few. Most of them they're like co-productions because we doing the shooting somewhere else in the other country. But documentary genre and short films still are being made. And we, for example, at the Ukrainian Film Festival, we are having the short film competition, and we receive every year, during the last 3 years of full-scale invasion, we receive a lot of new short films, being done, released, produced in Ukraine. Yeah.
And this film didn't speak at all about the topic of war. Is it important to also have these escapist topics as well that don't refer, or did I miss some subtext?
Yeah, Joel. Do you remember at the beginning when humanity was destroyed?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's subtext.
Yeah, it has a lot of references to the Ukrainian war, actually. Yeah.
I think one of the things that's also really interesting about the film and about international filmmaking is that, like, sort of intrinsic to the plot and also utilizing subtitles as part of the storytelling, because you've got people from different nations speaking differently. And so watching the film, depending on how much Ukrainian or French you know, you get a slightly different experience. I, of course, know none of either. I think they might have said s'il vous plaît once, and I was like, bam, nailed it. But croissant. I knew that word too. But it's really fun how that piece of meta artifice actually plays a role in the film. And I thought that was, amongst everything I saw, the most interesting piece of it from a filmmaking standpoint. But also I thought, again, it's also something that you can do from your laptop. It's like adding those layers and utilizing the fact that it is international and that you've got a language. The film is less interesting in some ways if I do understand everything that everyone is saying all the time. And I thought that was a really interesting outcome of a unique situation. I guess there's no question there. So when it comes to the submissions and the films in your festival, is it Ukrainian filmmakers? Is what defines a Ukrainian film for the Ukrainian Film Festival Berlin? Is it the language, the filmmakers, where it's shot?
We are not only taking Ukrainian directors whatsoever, and also the film that's shot in Ukraine, produced in Ukraine, doesn't matter for us. I think the main criteria is the context. It should have some Ukrainian-related context. I mean, and we feature a lot of films that are having very minor connection to Ukraine, but having the Ukrainian story, or the war story, or some other direct got impressed by some recent events and then decided to make a film. So it's like this. It doesn't matter the language, the cost. 50% should be like
right.
Ukrainian. It doesn't matter.
The spirit is more important than the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I'm also curious. If you have a sense of it, because it grew organically from a club into this bigger festival. Is there a reason why it's important to you to have it be a Ukrainian film festival in Berlin?
Yeah, for sure. But Berlin and Germany in general is one of these cities. I'm off. That after more than 35 years, like very deep connections to Russia. I mean, politically, business-wise, culturally, when we have the Russian house in the center of Berlin and financed by Russia. So they had so much platform, so much exposure, and they still do. And we are basically, we founded the festival to have a platform to fight this imperialism and in general this German kind of love for the Russian culture, and to offer something new, because new approaches, new discussions, new agenda, and I think we are doing pretty well, not only with Ukraine, because for the last 3 years we are featuring a lot of Armenian, Georgian films from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, all this post-Soviet Union kind of republics that has this unique culture and being colonized by Russia. So we are having this kind of role. We took a bigger role in that sense, and this is a lot of work to do in Germany in that context. Of course, now you all know more about Ukraine than 3 years ago. Probably, yes,
it's
but
pronounced
still.
Ukraine, actually.
Ukraina. Ukraina понад усе. As we say, Ukraine above all. Yeah. So yes, it's still like a lot of work, if we have this bigger mission. Like it's in Germany, it's pretty harsh to do this, but yeah, we are successful in that sense. Yeah, that kind of showing our country, and also like the history is through culture, basically through
and providing
film.
that other perspective and establishing that.
Yeah.
Can I ask? So lately, there's been talk about the new CDU-led government talking about reducing benefits to be paid to Ukrainian refugees, making it more difficult for Ukrainian refugees to stay here. How is that affecting the Ukrainian community, may I ask?
I think that for the 3 years, the people that came to Germany and especially to Berlin, they already found a way. Like most of my friends that, for example, came, they already like transferred to the freelance visa or found a work or something. It's only like now is a question of the older people. They just went here and now they are on the social benefits. But in general, Ukrainians always are flexible and adjust. And I think that, it's a tough thing, because we all know that the war will be not finished, and they kind of postponing it also like 1 year, like we're gonna host Ukrainians, we're gonna prolong this thing. It's a harsh kind of thing for the governments also to support it, but in the Ukrainian community we don't have like any hope for the a future in a sense, and we need to adjust. And this social benefits thing that everybody understood, that it's not going to be forever or something. They kind of find a way to live, to survive, to move also. Yeah.
Well, good luck to you and your community. I hope that you find a way to stay here and survive. Good luck with the film festival, October 22 to 26 at various locations around Berlin, the Ukrainian Film Festival. The movie that we were talking about is called You Are the Universe. I hope the actor comes back and makes more great films, because he was fantastic.
Yeah, actually the film will be featured in German cinemas from the 4th of September. And we're going to repeat it at the Ukrainian Film Festival 2 times. So, feel free to invite friends if you want to recommend the film You Are the Universe.
Fantastic. Well, once again, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your film. So give a warm applause, please, to Valentina Zalevska. So I saw another short film as part of the program here, which got me thinking, and it was a film by, I believe, a Colombian man, a short film, a very ironic take on Berlin, questioning basically our way of living and pointing out that we live here thanks to the exploitation of the developed world. And
what do you mean by we, Joel?
Well, I'm sorry, Dan. I didn't know you're excluded from the we.
I don't know. Which we are you referring to? Everyone?
Well, it was images shot around Berlin of just what we do. People on the street in parks, living it up, enjoying life, and then contrasting that with images from developed countries, mostly from South America, from Colombia, where there's coal farms, mines that still send 70% of their coal to Germany to burn to, power our existence. And, shots of bio bananas in supermarkets that come all the way from South America, which, I happen to have some bio bananas in my camp food kit, which, made me feel particularly spoken to. It was a message about colonialism, basically, and how it's still ongoing. And Berlin is a colonial city in general. And that is a segue to introduce...
Wait, what's wrong with the bananas?
Let's not get into bananas now. Okay. Let's talk about Berlin as a colonial city, because that is a topic of interest to Izzy Choksi, our wonderful co-host, who is also a tour guide and will soon have a tour coming up focusing on this exact topic. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I am a tour guide. I've been a tour guide in Berlin for 10 years now, but I stopped doing it full time during the pandemic, obviously, because everyone did, and then I went into climate. So I work full time in a job to do with climate policy. But yes, I have these tours that I'm doing with the Berliner magazine that just keep me in the game, really. For the next career change that's going to be necessary as a result of world chaos. But yeah, so the one that's coming up on the 20th of July is on colonialism. It's Berlin as a colonial city, and it tracks the history of Berlin's colonial adventurism, not just in outside of Europe, but also within Europe as well. So it does talk about intra-European colonialism of the Prussian state, and then also focuses on Germany's involvement in the colonial exploits of Africa. And also hosting the Berlin Conference of 1884, where Africa was essentially divided between these different colonial powers to absolutely horrendous consequences. And talks about the very first genocide that Germany committed during the 20th century, not its last, obviously, of the Herero and Nama people. And then at the end, we talk about the legacy of colonialism. And ask the question, is Berlin still a colonial city? I would love to have seen that bloody film, because that seems material.
I can get you a copy.
So this is a genre of tours that it seems to be popular. It's like thinking tours, tours about a topic, about a subject, not just, let's go see the Brandenburg Gate, right?
Yeah, I mean, also there's a group of people who've been tour guiding in Berlin for a very long time. And I think when you've been tour guiding in a city for a long time, you could do the tourist tours, which are amazing. One of my favorite tours that I ever was able to do was 800 Years in 4 Hours. This is absolutely where I sparkle and shine the brightest. But then I don't have tourists to really speak to anymore. Like, that's not really my audience anymore. And I can do tours maybe once a month. I work full time, the 2 kids and stuff. It's very limited the amount of time that I can dedicate to tour guiding now. So I want to do tours that really that mean something to me. So these are tours that I've written over the last 4 or 5 years. So I have the colonialism tour. I have another tour about social movements in Berlin, how social movements have shaped the city and also were shaped by the city as well. Goes through 70 years from 1848 until 1919. And then I have a third tour, which is about Gleisdreieck that I just wrote about 6 months ago, which is a really fun tour.
Your tour is called How to Build a Park.
How to Build a Park.
And I mean, I don't want to give the game away, but like, give us like a little spiel on why Gleisdreieck is such a fantastic park.
So that tour starts at Potsdamer Platz. So we talk about the complete destruction of the city of Berlin. We talk about the fact that the area of the Gleisdreieck was split by the Berlin Wall. So on one side you had basically a wasteland, and then the wall, and then East Berlin, and talking about post-industrial wastelands and how they repopulate with different kinds of nature, and talk about the fact that there was 3 stations that were there before the end of the Second World War. 3 of the biggest and busiest stations in the whole of Berlin that were all destroyed, or the upper area of it was destroyed, and then they still exist as S-Bahn stations below. And then talk about obviously the efforts to create it into a park from 2008 onwards. It's a tour that goes into essentially, like, I think mostly the tour is about essentially social movements stopping it from turning into a motorway, social movements stopping it from turning it into office buildings for the extension of Potsdamer Platz, and social movements stopping the city from chopping down a huge amount of the beautiful trees that grew out in this post-industrial landscape. So it's about how important civil society organizations have been in shaping the way that park looks today. And the positive story is that it's the most visited park in Berlin.
Is it now?
Yeah, people don't realize that, but it is the most visited park in Berlin. It gets a huge numbers of visitors. I think also it serves an area that is green poor. In the city of Berlin, people have got the Tiergarten, and then further down south, they have the Tempelhof, but in between, there's not that many big green spaces. And so Gleisdreieck actually serves Kreuzberg, Schöneberg, and some parts of Mitte as well. So it's got these 3 districts that really depend on it in a big way. And then down south, Tempelhof as well. So you've got a lot of districts that have a lot of stake in the game, and love that park a lot. So yeah,
Cool. What inspired you to do this tour?
I was cycling through it. So sometimes when I'm in a bad place, it sounds super corny, but it's actually true. And I think maybe it's the reason I became a tour guide in Berlin. Sometimes when I'm in a very bad place, what I do is I take these long cycle rides, or I get on the S-Bahn and I go right to the end. It's very difficult now because of the kids and stuff, so you have to really like parcel out time to do this. But I was on a bike ride going through Berlin, and I went from Yorkstrasse, and I just got on this Grundzug, which is like this cycle path that goes from Südgelände all the way to Tiergarten. And I was just passing through, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, I know this is Gleisdreieck, but Jesus Christ, I love this place so much. This is amazing. And then I was like looking at all these wild plants and like these areas of wilderness. And then I got myself into a part of the park that isn't a throughway. You sort of just get lost in this little piece of wilderness, and then you can't get out the other side. It's not a throughway. And then I just thought, wow, this is really quite spectacular. Maybe I should do a tour about it, because it seems like it would be interesting. And do you know what also inspired me is we did an episode last year and interviewed like 3 experts on the Gleisdreieck. And I think I was remembering that episode whilst I was cycling through it, and I was thinking, wow, I think there's probably enough material to do How to Build a Park. And then I started researching it, and it turns that someone wrote the book on how to build the Gleisdreieck Park in 2015. So I basically just like used that book and stole loads of material from it. I didn't steal it.
Link in the bio.
Link in the bio.
Well, you're doing this as part of Berlin by Foot, which is by the Berliner magazine, a series of tours. And there's lots of different ones about political issues, cultural issues. So even residents can learn a lot by going on a tour. You don't just have to be a tourist.
And fans of Berlin podcasts will notice a high level of Berlin podcaster crossover in the tours, in the guides. Former guests of Radio Spaetkauf and podcasters in their own right amongst the guides.
Podcast History Flakes. So one of the stars of History Flakes, Johnny Whitnam, is doing tours for the Berliner as well, Berlin by Foot.
Okay, so that was your job. You were a tour guide,
Yep.
and you still are on the side. But your main job now is you actually do climate policy.
Yep.
You're part of a climate policy think tank, and you're looking into how we can transform our cities to make them more sustainable, particularly to do with heating, with state central heating. And you've got an update on some of our Berlin heating issues.
Yeah, so I actually work on industrial policy. So I work on steel decarbonisation on a global level. So, but yeah, no, I wanted to give an update on the Berlin climate targets and look at the city and how well it's doing to achieve its climate targets.
I'm guessing well.
It's doing really well, guys. Super, super well. No. So whilst we are currently experiencing a heat wave, I just thought it was kind of interesting to look at like how we're going to prevent those from being more extreme in the future. And yeah, lots of people just don't agree that we need to, I think is the problem. So the city actually has very ambitious climate targets. So we are planning to be climate neutral by 2045, which is in keeping with federal German targets, and a 70% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030 compared to 1990, and at least 90% by 2040. So this is all very much in keeping with the EU targets, Germany national targets, and so forth. So there was a referendum to actually improve those targets about 3 years ago, but it failed. But yeah, so as of today, is Berlin on track to meet its 2030 target of 70% reduction in CO2 compared to 1990? And no, it's not on track, unfortunately. And it seems to be veering further away from track. And one of the things in the news recently was a decision by Kai Wegner to halt plans to build wind turbines in the Grunewald forest. So he was citing environmental and urban planning concerns. And Wegner argued that Berlin should be a solar engine, not a wind engine, and has called for the federal government to reconsider mandates requiring city-states to allocate land for wind energy. We currently have... Oh, sorry? Is it just because it's windy?
No, just because it's windy. Go ahead. I want to comment on wind.
Yeah, so we currently have targets of 2% per federal state, which is hard for Berlin as a city-state because we are very small. We're a very small city-state, but 2% of our land is supposed to be taken up by wind turbines in the future. And the reason that wind turbines are important is because you can't just depend on solar, because that's bloody obvious, isn't it? The sun doesn't always shine. It doesn't shine very much at all in winter. So you need to create resilience in your grid, and you create resilience in your grid by a mixed grid, and a mixed grid includes quite a bit of wind. Wind also produces more capacity in terms of its energy production, which is great for off-takers who are in the industrial area who need like higher capacity energy.
So on this wind turbine debate, it was horrible to see it happen in just over a matter of weeks. I saw the headlines in the newspapers. There was an announcement that there was a consultation about putting some wind turbines in different areas of the city, and all the local newspapers jumped on this, and you really got to see the political agenda behind these newspapers, because it was just a wall-to-wall anti-wind coverage on the front pages of all the newspapers, slamming this idea that we should build wind turbines, that they were going to be slightly noisy, that they were going to destroy our parks. And then Kai Wegner, the mayor, obviously backed down on it, and then suddenly it was like Kai Wegner stops the wind madness. He's put an end to the wind craziness, and it was just overwhelming how anti-wind the Berlin media was.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way we can really solidify adoption of wind is to decouple do local pricing of electricity. So then you've got like the very windy north of Germany and the very anti-wind south of Germany. So Bavaria famously like doesn't want to build any fucking wind at all.
So make them pay.
Make them fucking pay for gas. Like, you know, that's what I want to see. Like areas that don't build solar and wind need to pay for it when the coal phase out comes, which is coming very soon, right? The coal phase out is scheduled for 2038, but it will come probably by 2032 because of the CO2 pricing ETS mechanism that we have in place at the EU level and has been adopted by Germany as well. Like, so coal is going. We need other forms of energy to keep the lights on. And if we don't have very, very expensive grid connections, which the CDU, again, are trying to bury underground, which is just an incredibly expensive way of doing grid connections, we have this other thing called pylons, which work way better and are much cheaper, like billions and billions of euros cheaper. But the CDU is trying to bury everything underground, which takes a lot more time. A lot more federal planning needs to go into it and so forth. So we have to have these grid connections between windy, northern, sunny parts of the country and the south, which doesn't actually want to do any wind at all. And we're going to have to do that in Berlin as well. We're going to have to import renewable energy from elsewhere and invest a lot of money in grid connections that aren't currently there. So rather than just doing our own, which seems like the resilient thing to do, we're going to be again essentially trying to import it from elsewhere, which makes us less resilient and probably more expensive over time when people in the north are like, I'm not paying for your gas anymore, so like I'm not going to pay for your coal anymore. I'm not going to pay for your gas. They are like 120% renewable because they export so much of their energy. So they have like a totally clean grid and they're just sick and tired of paying for fossil fuels.
Do you know what happened with the wind turbines? Was it completely cancelled or are they just going to build them in some other places?
No, we still have the 2% target per state. So Habeck in the last, the BMWK, so the last version of the Ministry of Environment and Climate, he made it so that they would have to adopt targets, or they would have to say which parts of the federal land would be built on by wind turbines by, I think, 2026. And if they hadn't done it by then, the federal state would come in and mandate it. Can you imagine Friedrich Merz mandating areas for wind parks? That's not going to happen. So I think what worries me is that the targets that we managed to get passed in the last legislative period are just going to be watered down continually, and essentially what this does, it slows down and it puts way more pressure on the next generation of legislators to actually do far more than they can in the amount of time. Like, it's much better to do this over 15, 20 years rather than do it in like 3.
And isn't Berlin windy? We could put a few turbines up. The last few weeks we've had these insane windstorms that have been sweeping through every afternoon. Yeah. Let's harness that while we can.
Yeah, that's our thing.
I mean, there's an old windmill out in Sanssouci, so it's not like it's a new thing. By the way, it's pretty fun. They can make great. But I say that actually in some, I have a serious point behind that, which is when I came to Germany and first was like looking through the countryside, and I would go and I would see wind turbines, and I kind of find them beautiful. And they fill me with hope, and I like the way they look. And the opposition to these things is mainly about aesthetic. Yet I haven't seen anyone try to adjust the aesthetic of wind turbines in order to make it something that people are going to like better. Like, why keep them ugly? Has anyone tried this? Has anyone said, like, we'll just stick the fake wood, we'll make it look like an old German thing? You like old German things. You know, like we rebuilt, like the same people who rebuilt the house into the thing that we hate with the Humboldt Forum, right? Right. If you can do the Humboldt Forum and make that look like it's the goddamn palace again, then just do that with the wind turbines, and the same people be like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful."
Build some Yoli wind turbines.
Make it look like the one in fucking Sanssouci.
So bringing it back to...
I mean, they did that with cell phone towers.
But bringing it back to movies, there was this really sweet film that came out a few years ago called Chick. Do you remember this? Yeah. It's about like a coming-of-age story between these two teenage boys. They're from Berlin, and they have this like wild adventure together, and they spend the summer together. It's really like wonderful film. And at one point in the film, they spend a long time like around a wind turbine, and it becomes a very like beautiful scenic. I was like, this is basically propaganda for renewables. Great, great, great. Happy about that.
Yeah.
But
they
more films
beautiful.
Filmed underneath wind turbines.
Right.
You know,
that's
with the
great.
whooshing
Subtle
in the
propaganda.
background.
I mean, the cigarette industry did it. Why can't the wind turbine industry just have the villains just like use it? You know, they're like, I got a wind turbine, and you tie James Bond to it, and the people are like, wind turbine. But I actually I know I sound stupid, but I'm really serious. The issue is aesthetic. Why not try and adjust that? Why not, just cell phone towers? They make them look like trees.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have much of a wind industry left, so we have to import everything from China. So you have to go and talk to the Chinese about that.
Okay, I'm on it.
We have next year's Lakeside Film Festival, a track devoted to films about wind turbines. I hope the curators are taking notes. On that note, we've reached the end of our show. It's been wonderful to come out here again, see all our old friends. I hope that we see you all again next year when we come back out here and do this again. Anything to plug, Dan? Back in town?
Back in town on July 24th. We'll be continuing our EAB, that's Europäische Academy Berlin X Radio Spaetkauf mini-series. This year we're tackling saving culture. We'll have some great experts on that field and in that field. That's July 24th. I'll put a link up to that. I also would encourage you to subscribe to Certain Futures. It's a podcast I'm making with the Futures Project about aging Europe. Turns out I'm middle-aged, and so is the entire continent, and we're only getting older. So that'll be releasing at the end of July, but you can subscribe now. That's Certain Futures Podcast. You can probably Google it. And thank you to everyone who supports this podcast with your donations, your subscriptions via Steady. It is what keeps the proverbial and to some extent literal lights on.
And I would just re-promote the tour that I have on the 20th of July. Please go online through the Berliner and you can find the Berlin by Foot tours. And mine will be on the 20th of July. And it's Berlin as a colonial city.
And I have my little plug. I've released a few little mini documentaries lately from my travels. You can see them on my website, joeldulroy.com. So are we all plugged away? We're all plugged away. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming and enjoying our podcast. And thank you to Lakeside Film Festival for...
Berlin News in English.